Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. And it's Thursday. It's January 12th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And this is going to wrap up our week. No chart lessons on Fridays. Um, as you can see here on the daily chart, let me zoom in a little more here. Another kind of neutral type day, but we closed higher. This was really a range day, but we did close higher than we did the previous day. So we're continuing to march higher. But we are starting to find resistance up here. Once you start to get in this purple and brown between there, you're starting to get overbought. So we haven't quite made a measured move. We hadn't quite made the measured move based on the width of this or the first leg. So this dash line would be a measured move based on the width of this pink range, and the orange would be a measured move based on this last leg up. So we haven't met either target. My guess is we'll probably meet one or both of those tomorrow. We could continue higher. We might. My guess is prices are going to try to attempt to test that trend line there. So we'll see what happens. Um, but yeah, we continue to struggle to go, but prices go higher. We keep having these sell-offs, and they come back every time. So anyway, mostly mixed trading today. I mean, we had some really strong moves up, some really strong moves down, and I think the market's just really this market obviously wants to go higher, but it's struggling to do so. And every time there's a sell-off, it comes right back. So I think people are selling into these rallies, and then the market then turns around and chugs its way back higher again. So we shall see. We'll flip over to the intraday chart, the 2,000 tick chart. We'll take a look at what that looks like and uh, what the trades are. And this pretty much the 2,000 tick chart pretty much mimics what you see here. It's a range type day that closed higher than the previous day, and that's the daily chart just kind of confirms it today. Sometimes they look a little different. That can tell the tale, and you can see we just continued to press higher even though we closed way off the highs today. Well, I shouldn't say way off, but we closed considerably off the highs today. Where yesterday we closed almost the last 2 days we closed almost on the highs. But let's flip over there. Okay, here's a look at it. You can see you can see the lows, the highs up here, the midline, and we spent a lot of time in this midline here, right in the middle of this range before we finally pushed this second leg up. There were two legs up. What happened here was we had this news item that sold off really strongly, and then we had two-legged correction, only to see a couple more legs down, and then we rallied here, and prices just really struggled until we finally found the bottom and worked and attempted to make a second leg up, but we did not reach that target, which would have been the previous highs here. And we sold off really quickly after this green channel played. Actually, we just had a break and a move down. That was a really strong sell-off. So the last two times we've reached that price level, that's three times we've sold off up there. So, and two of them are really, really, a lot of selling came in right there. So, but then they slowly take it back up. This evening we sold off again when we reached that high, but not quite as aggressively as we did earlier. So somebody was selling up here. A lot of contracts were going. So somebody's selling those highs right there, at least for now. Maybe tomorrow's a different story. We shall see. It could be a large institution unwinding something. Who knows? But anyway, let's zoom on in here. You see the bigger picture. Let's zoom in here. We'll go through the trades. Of course, this blue, anytime you see anything red up here that's economic right now, I would pay close attention to it, and I would be flat. So I'd be flat probably uh, by 7:15, and I don't really think you should trade much before 7. So really today best just to wait till this thing at least 30 minutes or until the market settles down, and that's right in here about 30 minutes later. And then you could start trading. But I didn't really see anything that would interest me or that you could really trade until we came up. Notice we made this leg up, and again that's two legs up. And again, we didn't get anything like a measured move either. We just couldn't breach this resistance around 4,020 or so. But just not a really, nothing you could really trade in here till we get the break. A couple legs up. This one's tempting. You might go short right there. It's a pretty bearish bar. Good ways away from the EMA, and you do have your break and two legs up. But you got to be careful with a strong move like that. Generally, I prefer waiting on the lower high, and this actually broke higher and turned down. And somebody else asked me about a trade yesterday that it actually didn't trigger unless you traded the engulfing bar. The next bar was like made an equal low, and it never broke lower. And so be careful trading these engulfing bars, because it was the second entry that and I guess that trader took the trade. I don't know. He asked me about it anyway, and but it wouldn't have triggered if you waited for this bar to close and put your sell stop right here. But if you traded it on when it broke higher and turned, if you traded it when it broke out the other side as an engulfing bar, then you got sucked into the trade only to watch it reverse on you, and you got trapped. So be careful with these. You really need to know what you're doing. You're always taking a little bit of a gamble in most cases, unless it's proven resistance across there. I think you can pretty much prove this was proven resistance. So maybe you trade that engulfing bar, but I'd be careful with them. And then, of course, you get a reversal, perfect reversal right here, and then it was off to the races down. So you probably would have got a runner on one of these if you try it. Might have got a runner on any three of those entries, depending on how you entered. This would have been a pretty nice move. And then, of course, we get the break here. And this is similar, right? This is actually maybe the trade he asked about. Notice here that when it broke below the green bar, there's a second entry. But you can't trade that unless you traded the engulfing bar. But notice how, so if you traded the engulfing bar, you got trapped before it went higher. And so I think this is the exact trade he asked about. And you can see right there why that's dangerous, because you get sucked into this trade. But if you wait for the signal bar and don't trade the engulfing, it never triggers and you don't get trapped there. So I don't know if it was from yesterday or today or what, but if it wasn't, that's exactly the exact same thing that happened right there. And this trend's just not over with yet. I didn't mark this one. You might look at this as a triple test, but this didn't quite get back up there. And it looks really congested. It's real close to the EMA. We don't have a new high here after the break, so I don't think you should take anything in there. I think it's too risky. And of course, if it drops on down, there is a triple test right here, but we just came off the low, and we're just kind of working sideways, congested. I don't think you risk that. And if you're just patient and wait a minute, you come up, you get a first entry and then a second entry, and they're both right off that key entry point. Confirm it. So there's a second entry short right there. Boom, off it goes. We actually get a little bit of an overshoot here, so that could lead to a break on the other side or even a reversal. And this is just chopping sideways. I didn't really draw anything here. This actually has a little bit of a trend to it. And you see you get a break. It tries to make a new high and doesn't, but there's no setup to go short there. Drop on down, and there's another entry off the key entry point there. But we've had this overshoot. No signal bar there. You can't enter on that one. You don't get a lower high or anything. And the next thing you know, we're going the other way. Off it goes here. Unfortunately, again, just no setups here. Unless you decide to enter down here, and I think that's very risky, even though that was the same low from before, and we are a little ways away from the EMA. If you want to be super aggressive, maybe you enter there. There's probably room back to the EMA, but I'd want a higher low and probably a reversal pattern, and we don't get either one. It just takes off. No second entries up through there, nothing. It just boom, boom, boom. You might look at that as 2 legs back, and it is right off the key entry point. But by that time, you've been away from that EMA a long time, so that one's risky as well. But it's if you were going to find an entry up through there, that's the best one you get. And then all of a sudden you get the break. And again, it's just a first entry. There's no triple test, no double test, no high or low, and off to the races it goes, making a new high. So this market's just crazy today. Just crazy period lately. It's just part of it. So um, sometimes you got to watch these great moves and you scratch your head and say, I wish I had a chance to enter, but I don't. We talked about it yesterday. If you don't get the setup, doesn't matter what it did, even if you thought you knew it was going higher, don't look back and kick yourself about that because you did the right thing. This actually just extends on over here, and we'll throw the measured move on there just to see, and you can see that we came down there to the measured move and bounced. I don't see any. There's a triple test there. It looks a little congested to me, but it is a range. It is a failed breakout. It is a triple test. We'll probably go back to the other side. So maybe you take that trade. I didn't mark it red because it's a little bit aggressive. This is, and of course we didn't get back up there here, so I'm a little leery of that one. And that's where you get the trend down and the breakout, new low. And I didn't mark this one either, although it is a first entry, and it makes a higher low and then a second entry. But it looks too congested to me, again, similar to this one. But there is a failure there, and it does break lower, and you can see it looks like it's trapped people. If this would have closed on its high, maybe you go long there. I mean, you could still probably argue for it to be green, but I'm not crazy about it. And of course, you got your break, move to a new high, and then you find the resistance here, and you get that last little hoorah push up and that big bearish bar way away from the EMA that closes back inside the channel. I like that one. There is a lower high here. Again, you would have to trade this as an engulfing bar if you wanted to take it, and because it has too much stem on the bottom down here. I mean, it probably still closes in the lower 2/3, but that's risky, especially when it's closing above the EMA after it broke out a little bit. And so unless you took this one on an engulfing bar, which I don't recommend in the middle of a range like that, you can't really take that trade. So, if you want to be a little aggressive, maybe you trade the engulfing bar. There's a little breakout pullback short, but again, you can't take that. It's too congested. And then we get a close outside, new low, and then we're working up again. And I drew this one. A lot of times you'll see me start on the high or low, and people say, well, why'd you start it there? Well, that's really where the upward trend started. Doesn't mean that you probably couldn't argue that this was right here too. They're both correct. So which one is the better play? It's hard to say. So this is all too congested, so there's no real setup to go short or long here. And same thing up through here, except if you did play the green one, you got a break and 2 legs up. And so this was the way I was playing it. And notice you get the close outside, 2 legs up, and you're way away from the EMA with that bearish bar. So I liked that one, and you can see that turns out to be a really nice trade. There's a lower high here, but it's not one you could trade. It doesn't really fit the criteria. We've moved way too far to consider that as a lower high. It doesn't even get back to the EMA there. Then you close outside, and we try to go lower twice and fail, but you can't trade that. It's a failed second entry short, but you can't trade that into the EMA, and I don't think you want to go. It's not a reversal type pattern, so you just kind of have to leave it alone. And then we're just congested here again. I don't know why I didn't color that one. I color them just to make them a little easier to see, but you hopefully can see the congestion right here. And I just don't, there's just nothing there to trade. And really it looks like you probably just get like a little measured move up. Then you turn back down, and again, there's nothing really up here to trade. You might look at that as a triple test, but there's not really any space in there. It does make a high and a low and then breaks higher and then comes back. I'd rather see a little space in there um, to really call that a triple test. So really, to me, it just looks like either a first entry or really it just looks like a range going short. And there's not. You might play that as a range and say, okay, that's good enough to take a short right there because it is a range. And in that case, maybe you take it. But if you've got room to get out right there. So I haven't even looked at it. I just didn't like the trade personally. I wouldn't take it myself. But I mean, if you read it like that, it kind of meets the criteria. Let's just see if there's enough room there. I think there is. Yeah, there's over 2 points, so there's more than enough room. And then we run down here. We've already had a close outside here, and we did make a new high. And then we turn down. Again, I didn't color that one for some reason. And you get a break and a move to a new low, and then we're going the other way again. And this time, you do get a reversal pattern here. But it just, again, we're chopping, we're on both sides of the EMA. It looks a little congested, a little sideways. You can clearly see that there. And there may be a bigger sideways pattern here, but really we were still making lower lows and lower highs till right here. So I didn't like trading that as a reversal because you're not really looking for if this is like a reversal pattern. This looks more like sideways stuff. But when it gives you a second entry after the failed second entry short, notice the new high, first entry, second entry, and this doesn't really look congested there yet, sideways, but it looks just more like some up-down bars, like there's a little indecision, which there would be here, but we just came off the lows again and made a higher low, so you'd expect us to come up and try to test these highs. So if you got something like that that's probably trapped people to the short side, maybe you go long there. And then of course you make a new high here, and then there's a first entry and a second entry, and that confirms that trend line. So I like that one too. And you can see this takes off this time. Then you get another second entry here. The problem with this one is that does look like congestion. We haven't got to the upper side. I mean, at that point, you might have had this drawn like this, and this could be a little bit of an overshoot as well. But it's hard to really know if that's the upper side and that the midline. It all fits either way. But to me, that's where I played it to begin with. And so you're kind of right in the middle. So there's still plenty of room to the upside, and we didn't come back to the downside, but we just came off the downside. So we could be going to make another leg up like so. And so with that being a second entry, maybe you take that trade. So I marked it green. There's some reasoning for it. It's a little aggressive. And you can see we pushed higher here, and then we just kind of work sideways again. And again, I don't know that this is an overshoot because it still fits here okay. In fact, I believe this is probably more accurate. I think it does fit better here. It makes more sense. And so we started working sideways here. We couldn't even really sell off. There's some strength in this move, and we're working sideways here until we get a close outside, a move to a new high, and then boom, off it goes again. So again, I don't see that as a triple test. We're not looking for second entries in the sideways stuff, and you're not really looking for shorts. That's the main thing. And I don't see any. Maybe there's a long here, but I don't see a reason. It's just a first entry. Notice the new high, first entry. It's not a triple test. It's not a second entry. You might call that a second entry, but you don't have room to get out. You might play this as a range by now, but you don't have room to scalp out. You do get a short there, but you can't go short right into the EMA and the trend line. But just notice if you're patient, a few minutes later you get a second entry right here with the trend, and that's the first close outside. I didn't mark that one, but I sat there and thought about it, and I was going to come back and mark it green, and I just forgot about it. You could also call that a triple test. I mean, I really kind of like that trade. Um, I didn't see this in real time. I wasn't trading at this point. So, but if you see that on the far right hand side of your screen, looks pretty good. I mean, it's obvious we got a range, and we should be trying to test this high. We should be probably going back to here. We've been going back and forth, and as long as you got room there, you could take that trade. So it's real close to being blue if you don't call it blue. If you called that blue, I wouldn't argue with you. It's a little congestion there with a little failed break. I mean, there's another little congestion inside the range there. And of course, we make the failed breakout, and we turn down right where where we had some previous resistance. And the key here is that we only got one leg up, and this you could turn down and get another leg up. So I'm not as crazy about this one. This is where you might want to wait on a lower high. And somebody asked me about that. I get that question a lot. When do you trade a lower high? Well, it's one of those things where you just need to get experience with it and watch it. And all we're really doing is we're in an uptrend and we're making higher highs and higher lows. Here we're really just going sideways and we break out. But instead of taking that first entry, here we're waiting on a second entry, even though you're not looking for second entries here either. But we're trading the lower high because it just proves that, hey, prices have been making higher highs and higher lows or going sideways, and then suddenly you make a lower high. So now are we about to make, it just gives you more confidence that, hey, we're about to start making lower lows and lower highs. So, and of course, if that's on the right hand side, that could just be one leg. And so you really need to be a good price reader, price action reader, and understand what the chart's telling you is that you had a break and new high and you've had resistance here, and now you got basically a double top with a lower high and a fairly decent signal bar. I could probably get a scalp out of that, and this thing may take off running the other direction again like it did. And so that's all a lower high is, or a high or low, is it just gives you more confidence that we're moving in your direction before you enter it. You don't just have one move down. Now you got two moves down and a lower one on top of that. So this attempt to go higher didn't have as much momentum as this one did. So hopefully that makes sense. But anyway, we drop way down here. Then you get a first entry, second entry. That's the first break. We're not back to the EMA yet, but that's a really strong move. And you'll probably at least make a new low there like you do. And that's a big bearish bar too. That turns out to be a pretty good move, and then boom, we're going the other way. Now, see, here's another high or low, but you got to be very careful picking bottoms, and that doesn't have that's not a great signal bar. It looks a little congested. If you'd had a really strong bar here, maybe you say, okay, I'm going to risk this back to the EMA, but you don't want to enter here. You want a little more proof that we're going higher. Well, if we break above this bar, then you've got a higher low and more proof that you're headed back that way. And so that's the idea behind a high or low. And we actually get a reversal pattern here, or a failure here. But again, it looks a little congested. I just, we didn't even make the midline here. We could turn back down again. So if it didn't, if you pulled way up here and pulled back and you had a lot of momentum above the EMA and pulled back and then took off, maybe you trade that one. But that's just going sideways. I don't like it. You haven't really confirmed any trend line or anything yet. This is really more like this right here. And again, there's just no entry up through here. And then we reach the highs and turn down again. And no setup across there, just more sideways congestion. You see that you can't really go short in that or long. No setup really. We break lower, bounce. We're working up. You get a close outside, try to make a new high, and there's your lower high again. And I like that one because it confirms that trend line. This thing is really kind of moved on me. And really nice move down. And of course it bounces 2 legs back. Unfortunately, you don't get a signal bar here because it's perfect right off the key entry point. Again, if that would have been a good signal bar, by all means go short right there. But because it's not a good signal bar, I wouldn't risk it. Of course, we drop down and we do get an overshoot here. You don't want to go long on that. It's too sideways. Yeah, it's a range, but there's not much room back to the highs here. At first, you're just looking at this range, but it turns out it's a 2-tiered range. And this would have been a decent short, but it was after 2:30. It's 5 minutes after. Maybe you take that trade. If you took that trade, I probably wouldn't have a problem with it. If it's in the first couple of minutes after 2:30, you're probably okay. But the reason you don't want to trade much after 2:30 is because you start to get into this stuff, and sometimes it starts at 3 o'clock, 3:30, and it starts looking like this, and you don't want to get stuck in something like that and then can't get out. You don't really take a loser, but you can't get a winner out of it. And next thing you know, you have to close it because you're coming to the end of the day, or your broker automatically closes it for you, and then you end up with a loser because you just didn't have time for the trade to complete. So just be careful trading late in the day like that. So there it is, mostly sideways. We're almost at 30 minutes, and so I'm not going to beat around the bush today, but I'm going to wrap this one up. Hope you've had a good week. Week went by quick again. We'll be back again to do it Monday, but I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.